Dr. Anderson.
Yes. How are you, Chris?
I'm great. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for inviting me. Glad to be here.
How did you get started helping disenfranchised and marginalized people in Philadelphia?
You know, my story really starts back with me being a native Texan in Fort Worth, Texas. I've always been very curious how communities work, how people help people. I grew up in a probably low, moderate income home. We didn't have the same resources and abundance that others had, but what we did have, we maximized it and we used it. I grew up with both parents in my home, both Christian faith, but they also grew, and a brother as well, excuse me. But we grew up in East Texas. Both of my parents grew up in almost abject poverty. And one thing I didn't realize is that I didn't have as much as what others had. But the blessings that I had and the privileges that I had to be able to have both parents, to be able to live in a home every day that I can go back to, had food on the table, had clothing, had water, but also had a church family, but also a community. I played sports. I played basketball all of my life. But there was always something in me that felt compelled to serve people. I've always been empathetic towards people. I've always been community oriented. And so that really didn't begin to become, to me, obvious until I got to college and I started to see how the world kind of worked, right?
What brought you to Philadelphia from Texas?
Well, basketball did. When I graduated from high school, from Eastern Hills High School, I attended the University of San Francisco. So I was there for 1 year from 91 to 92. That was quite of a cultural shock for me. It was different coming from a southern place and then making your way to California. And so I saw some things that I only perhaps read about or just hadn't been exposed to. But also it didn't have a college life. Everyone went into the city and we couldn't afford to go into the city. You know, the basketball players would go down to Kentucky Fried Chicken on Fridays to get some food, and that was about it. Other than that, the soccer games, the basketball collegiate games, where everyone would come into the city, but didn't have much campus life. So I was kind of, I wanted that, I desired that. So I ended up transferring to the University of Delaware, which does have a pretty broad campus life and not a lot of diversity. I think around that time it had been anywhere between 4 to 5% of the school population, but it had black fraternities. It had a center for black culture. It had things that I was familiar with, that I grew up with, but I also grew up in a community that was probably about 65-35. So I've always have gone to school with everyone from every race and ethnicity group.
How did you find yourself serving your community when you were growing up in Texas?
Well, I did a lot of volunteer service, but I was required to do volunteer service. Unfortunately, I remember getting a speeding ticket one time. I don't know if it was speeding or I didn't stop at a stop sign. So the judge said, rather than giving you a ticket, you got to do volunteer service. So I went to the Children's Hospital right there in Fort Worth, Cook's Children's Hospital, and I volunteered for my hours. And I ended up not only doing, I think, about 35 hours of volunteer, I continued to stay. And that was because how the kids were being, received me, right? I was at that time in high school. I'm sitting down, but my stature, I'm 6'7", closest, 6'8". And when I would walk around the hospital, I just kind of got this reception, and I loved the fact that I got a chance to talk to different families and to get different perspectives while I was there. And so I knew I had an interest in healthcare. My background is in health science. So I knew that was a trajectory that I might want to consider. But volunteering has always kind of satisfied this urge within you to do good.
Can you make any connection between the brokenness in cities like Philadelphia and the brokenness in communities?
I guess brokenness. One thing I'm learning in this work, I've been here with the Urban League of Greater Philadelphia with our name change here recently. Now we're serving the 5 collar counties as well as the city and as well as South Jersey, Burlington County all the way down. When you look at, whenever someone asks me, there's nothing that I can provide an answer to that's conclusive. Brokenness may mean something different from different people. What breaks my heart is to be able to see those that are in pain, to see those that striving every single day and yet can't seem to make ends meet or to make any progress, to see that despair. And that despair sometimes translate into anger, and it translates into sharpness. And what we see sometimes in the city, and not just in the city of Philadelphia, and many other cities, you see a frustration where I'm just sick and tired of being sick and tired. I'm tired of not necessarily getting the opportunities, the resources that others get. And what happens is that it's like a loss of hope. And I think that brokenness is somewhat related to hope, a hope of a better future, the hope of a better job, the hope of living in a better neighborhood, the hope of having a better public education system, the hope of getting my small business off the ground, the hope of getting my criminal record expunged for something that I did 10 years ago, which is now considered to be legal, that I can actually go out and get a family-sustaining job. So I think the brokenness is related to hope, but everyone has to define that for themselves.
When it comes to inspiring hope, what's the difference between something really big, like a huge scholarship to a school, or something small, like maybe just a smile as you're serving at a children's hospital and just kind of encouraging with your presence?
Well, I think it depends on the level of assistance that people need. In this coming week, we're going to be having our annual gala, and the gala is to raise money to send inspiring college kids to school. We offer about 31 to 32 students a $5,000 scholarship. The average annual cost to go to college is around $30,000 to $35,000. So can you imagine if you go to one of the top tier schools, you're looking at $50,000 to $85,000, and sometimes you may get some financial assistance and you may not. But to provide someone who may have the support at home but don't have the financial means to get to college, providing them assistance may be different, but also well-meaning to someone who's in despair, and they're just looking for an empathetic ear. We have workforce development programs. We have a reentry program for returning citizens. We're inside of the jails program called Pathway Homes. We're outside of the jails called Out for Good. And sometimes we get complimented on because we just take the time to listen to their story, to see them as a human being, to see them as someone of value. So we try to give people what they need, but sometimes it takes time to interact with people so we can kind of identify or to be able to kind of diagnose what they need. And if we can't provide that, then we need to refer them on to someone else who can.
Wow. So you said you just got back from Harrisburg, so I'm sure you've spent time with big decision makers and big lawmakers.
Yeah.
Tell me the difference between Washington making passing a bill that might try to help people versus the Urban League, which is a little more nimble, a little more local, able to kind of see exactly how to help and raising funds and directly helping the community that way.
Well, all politics, in my opinion, are local. We are a nonpartisan organization, but we're an organization that focuses on issues. We're willing to work with any side of the aisle if they're interested in investing in people, investing in communities, and seeing prosperity take place within communities. At the local level, it's real. If there's a pothole on your street, or if there's some trash, you can reach out directly to your state senator, or you can reach out to your state rep. Or if you're having an issue with getting your driver's license or something around zoning, because most of those regulations that happen are with your local officials. And we get an opportunity to interact and meet with them on a regular basis. Our organization is about human and civil rights. And civil rights simply meaning that we're here to work with you. We're here to advocate on your behalf to be able to get all of the resources and to make sure that your rights are being protected, whether your right to vote, whether your right to have access to social services, to have access to health care, just having the ability to exist as a human being. That is our goal. At the federal level, we have to continue to have conversations with our congressional representatives because most of our state budget is predicated on federal dollars. Our school districts is predicated on federal dollars. Money that we use to run our reentry program comes through the Department of Justice is federal dollars. The programs that we run to help small Black and brown businesses to equip themselves and to become structurally strong in order to compete for grants, those dollars may come through the CDFI, which has now been eradicated. So where are those resources, low interest loans, where equity is going to be to come through to be able to help these organizations to realize their dreams? So the federal budget has implications beyond our comprehension and sometimes our understanding and our knowledge. So our job is to make sure that we keep our congressional leaders informed about what we see and what we hear, the stories that we encounter every day, but also to make sure that we have relationships with our local elected officials. So when something needs to get done, we can apply that pressure, make that phone call, and to make it happen.
What does poverty mean to you?
You know, I don't really use the word poverty that much. It's one of those stigmas. It's one of those words that people tired to hear, saying that we're we're poverty, reduction. No, this is about wealth building. Poverty reduction was something that those in the civil rights era was honing on. Right? They didn't have much. They didn't have the very basic essentials and needs, and we were all dwelling in many regards in poverty. But now our newer generation, I think our millennials and our Gen Ys and Gen Zs, I want to say, and Gen now Zs, right? They're looking at wealth building. And so when we think about wealth building, we're thinking about not just having a job, but having a career that can be family sustaining for you, that you can be able to take your resources and not just nest them, lay your eggs in the nest, but to begin to be able to build up so now that you can provide those financial opportunities on to your family members or into others, that you may be able to hire people into your small business, or that you can seed and provide equity into other businesses. So we know that the city, unfortunately, is one of the largest cities in the country that is majority Black, but also the most impoverished. So I don't like to lead with the deficits. I want to lead with the assets. And this is not about poverty reduction, but it's about building wealth.
What does prosperity mean to you?
Prosperity is having what you need in order to achieve where you want to go. Some prosperity and for some may be an additional couple $1,000s a year, or $5,000 or $10,000 a year. Prosperity to me is not only economic and financial, but it's also about your health. It's also about your well-being. It's about your mental health. It's about your psychology. It's about how you think of yourself. When you walk into a space, how do you believe people perceive you? What are the optics? So prosperity, in many regards, can become a mindset, but it needs to be accompanied along with tools, real tools, so people can begin to achieve the goals, right, and achieve what they have set out to in their life. So prosperity, once again, it's one of those definitions, right, that I've learned not to just kind of a blanket definition from the Webster's or from ChatGPT, right, or AI. But prosperity for others could be, once again, I need to regain my health, or I just want to be able to have sound logic with my mental health. Some want to be able to have good financial health. Others may want to just have healthy relationships that are out there. So once again, I think that's a question that you have to ask the individual too.
Can you create a linkage between the mental adversities that you're touching on now and kind of that hopelessness, that lack of hope?
If you think about the hope that we have, is sometimes there are subliminal messages that's been sent. And I'm going to take Black young males. Sometimes the criminalization of Black males, whether it's been in the media, whether it's being how they're being encountered on a daily basis. You know, sometimes what happened because of these stereotypes, it causes for young men to react in a particular way. And they're reacting because you're treating me like something that I'm not. And, you know, and black males, we have the right, you know, to be angry, but we don't have the right to have our anger been weaponized, that we're someone that cannot be worked with, we're out of control, and we can't be trusted. And so we need to start to lift up the stories in our communities, especially in the city. You know, out of the 35 scholarships that we're giving out, we have several that are going to Morehouse, that are going to Spelman, that's going to Yale. We have young men from the city that's going to Ivy League. We need to lift those stories up, but we also need to understand the pathway. What did that family do? And then we may be able to share that information, you know, on to others. But we need to get back to the point where we are embracing our young people. Let's send them positive vibes. Let's have a conversation with them, not at them, right? Why didn't you vote? Why didn't you do this thing? They're not asking why. The question is, you know, what can we do to help you understand what civic engagement, civic participation is? And let's start to draw a line for what's happening in Washington, D.C. and what's happening in Harrisburg and how that impacts your life, the life of your children, and the life of your parents.
Can you tell me a little bit more about what that transformation looks like after you connect those dots?
You know, we've seen various levels of transformation. We've had people to come into our program and our workforce development, our reentry, small businesses. We have youth in education. We're inside of the schools with a project, with an initiative called Project Ready. That's around career development, character development, and helping children to realize their potential, whether they want to go to college, whether they want to go into a career, or they want to go into the building trades. We want them early exposure about what the opportunities are, but let's do a career assessment so they can understand what they do well. You know, young men have been told so many times what they don't do well or what they can't do, instead of doing an assessment to understand what their maybe innate abilities may be, or what their strengths or what their passions are. In our program with Ready to Work, we bring in employers from all over, and you can see their eyes start to light up. And dialect, because wait a minute, I didn't realize that was a job, or that was a such thing, and it pays what, and I can do what, the opportunities. And you can start to see that early exposure matters. Early exposure and representation matters. If a young black male or even a Latino male sees someone that look like them in school, not in high school, but in early elementary and middle school, it makes a difference, because now they can go and build a bond and ask them questions. And many times they don't ask those questions to others because they don't have the trust, right? They don't sometimes have the language or even have the confidence to talk about something that they're inspired to do. So what they're doing is just kind of going through life. But the transformation that can take place is a transformation of what I call self-discovery. Our job in our programs is to introduce you to yourself. And if you decide and you determine that I like myself, then continue to stick with us, because we can make yourself better.
What cultivates innovation?
Intentionality. You know, we're so busy with our work. I mean, every day our team is grinding, right? Our Dennis Nicholson, who runs our reentry program, you know, we're getting calls from the bench. We're getting calls from the district attorney's office. We're getting calls from probation and parole about enrolling individuals into our program. But we're inside of the jails as well. So sometimes the jails are calling us directly about, okay, can we add 1 or 2 people to your session tomorrow? So we have these relationships, but many times we answer the phone right away because we don't know if it's a crisis on the other side, and do we need to refer this person, or they just need that 10 minutes to be heard by someone. So being attentive, being intentional, being present with them, but also at the same time being real, authentic, and holding them accountable. And what I mean about accountability is that that's part of our reentry program, they've been just as involved, for them to understand what they've done. Take ownership of what they've done. hold yourself accountable. Now let's start to explore why you may have done it. Is it something that may have triggered you? Is it trauma in the past? Do you realize that what you have endured, what you have experienced is not normal? And when you find out that it's not normal, then you can start to understand and deconstruct, why do I get upset? Why does my blood pressure, my heart rate race when someone says something, someone looks at me a particular way? We have not taught our young men to self-regulate because we haven't taught them how to understand their pain, their trauma, and their triggers. We're not fully equipped to do that. We do work with other organizations that we can refer to, but we give them a place to talk about it and to talk about it with their peers. And then we give them tools on how to improve their life after they begin to self-discover themselves.
You just absorbed my next question, which is,
Yeah.
Does this hope and confidence that we're discussing come from external validation of people telling us, encouraging us, or does it come from within? Does it come from a place of a confidence from within?
I think it's both. I think external and internal stimulus. But let's think about when we're born as children. Most of our affirmation and our love come externally from your parents and from your mom. And at some point, that begins to kind of deteriorate, right? You still get that, always have that unconditional love from your parents, from your mom, and if they're fortunate to have their father or their mother in their life, but they have a really good caregiver. But it becomes a point where empathy begins to wane. And I believe that empathy begins to wane when a young man becomes of a certain age that now they've been perceived as been a threat. So rather than complimenting a young man that's walking on the same street or saying, hey, how are you doing? Or having that conversation, sometimes people cross the street. Or sometimes the phone call gets made to the local school and say, your kids are loitering in my area. And then when you get funding cut, now we don't have OST programs, out of school programs, right? We don't have after the bell so we can get them into an environment so they can have more constructive time. So these messages are constantly being sent to our young people that you're not valued and I'm in fear of you. So now you can do two things with that fear, right? You can explore it a little bit to understand, why do you fear me, so I can break down those barriers. And many times we don't have the maturity to do so. Or number two, I'm going to capitalize on that fear. And how do I capitalize on that fear? I'm going to make you fear me even more, right? Maybe because of something I've said, maybe something I've done, or just a gesture, right? It's a psychology, and I'm not a child psychologist in any stretch of the imagination, but I've spent quite a bit of time with young people, and we've heard their stories. If we can, as a society, treat every child like they're our own, whether you're in school, whether you're in churches, whether you're in synagogues, whether you're in organizations, I believe that's where we're going to start to see the transformation happen. But if we just distance them, push them out, and say that there's no hope, there's no possibilities for you, then they're going to internalize that, right? And then they start to create what some would call a discontinued future, where they say, I have no future. And then they start to become callous. And if they don't think they have a future and they become callous, that means that they're callous to other individuals. And that's where we start to see this mindset, and when we sometimes begin to see violence. If I don't care much about my life, why do I care about yours? We have to address that.
What is it about so many communities that you think drives them to be exclusive in their mentality of treating people?
I think it is that fear. I think it's the fear of the unknown. Much of what we learn about each other is portrayed in the media, right? It's a sound bite. It's a tweet. Now we've completely gone over to 30-second, 40-second videos, right? And the goal is for that video or that sound bite to go viral, and then we see that, and we immediately kind of create a judgment on what we see. So we're learning about each other through social media. That's not how it's intended. When was the last? I teach cultural diversity in healthcare at a university, and one of my assignments is a very basic assignment, and I say, I need for you to talk to 5 strangers throughout the course of the week. If you're getting ready to ride the bus, if you're at work, if you're someplace, just strike a conversation with a stranger. We don't do that anymore. Go to the airport. You can go to the library. Go anywhere where you will see individuals that used to communicate. We're all looking at our phones, whether we're at Netflix, we're watching clips, we don't have that conversation. So therefore, our diversity of thought and interaction is only being given to us in sound bites. And psychologically, they're there to get you to watch the next one and then watch the next one, and in order to get views. It's not necessarily there for you to get a deeper meaning. I like podcasts because I can watch a whole podcast for 45 minutes. So now I can keep whatever that comment was in context. So this fear of the unknown is extremely devastating in many regards, because if you don't know it, then you don't necessarily even want to take the time out to get to know what it may be. And it's no different than, thinking about the diversity of thought of someone who is extremely wealthy, right? I don't understand the psychology or the mentality of a billionaire, right? And so someone that has been brought up in abject poverty, someone that lives in a community that's been disinvested for a number of years, every corner we can see maybe a liquor store, or we can see something that I would say it creates coping, but in a negative way. Good coping is maybe going to the gym and working out, and or going to yoga and Pilates, or doing something that's going to be healthier to your body. But if you think about some of the coping mechanisms that we have in our communities, it's detrimental to the health that we have. So I'm not sure where we're going to. Is it going to get better? Is it going to get worse with technology, with AI? I'm not sure. We have socially engineered ourselves to distrust. And I understand you need to use your spidey senses, right? You need to know that, okay, if I'm going to park my car, lock my door, right? Because easy access. But for us to be able to get back having dialogue and communication with one another. One of the things we do for our internship program, we have almost 42 to 43 college interns with us, and we place them throughout the city. Our director, Charity Tucker, we do professional development and training on Fridays, and a lot of that is socialization, getting to talk, getting to know. How can I create relationships? How do I start to break down this barrier of fear? Because if you go into a work environment and if you see someone that you may be in fear of, then you're going to probably start to treat that person differently. And then that person's going to pick up that vibe. And unfortunately, that's the reason why some of our businesses and corporations in the city has an attrition rate of 70%. They hire from the city, but they don't stay. So you're telling me 2 out of 9 stay on the job for 6 months? We have to be able to address that. That's some hard skills and some soft skills that we need to be able to address, but at the same time address these optics about one another.
As we're discussing short form content and kind of that dopaminergic drip feeding that social media has given a lot of us, can you speak any comment to young people and the community building skills that's kind of been fractured through the phone? So everything is texting or gaming together or dating over through the technology. That's where their community is being developed at a young age.
I was just on a panel yesterday with our National Urban League, and we talked about digital connectivity as a pathway out of poverty. And what I share with my colleagues is that we don't realize, those of us that have the privilege of having broadband and having all of the Wi-Fi, is how much we use technology just on a day-to-day basis. If you want to pre-order your Starbucks, you go on your phone and do a mobile order. You stop by and pick it up. Why? Because we like convenience. If you like the new pair of shoes that's coming out, now we're getting, when there's a sale, we get a notification on our cell phones. Quickly, you hit a couple buttons, you can buy those shoes, and next thing you know, you're shopping using technology. You can't even go to the barber shop anymore without probably going to the website and scheduling for an appointment. And even church, even giving at church. Now, many churches are screaming. Now they don't even come in with their physical Bibles or anymore. They come in so they can have access through Wi-Fi. All of these are technology points, access points that we need on a daily basis. Our seniors are not necessarily equipped with this, but then our young people think that because they are connected through their phones, that they're socially connected. The research shows otherwise. They're really in isolation. You think because I am texting from my room with a group of 10 and 20 people that we are connected. No, you're connected through technology, but we're not connected in a humanistic way. So I think technology is good. I think technology, AI, I hope that we can use AI for good to help us to solve some of these socially pressing problems. Can we help people to wealth build? Can we help them to get those family sustaining jobs? Can we improve health? Absolutely, all of those things can. But every time we have good that's there, sometimes we have evil lurking around a corner. That technology can be used for good, but we've also seen it be devastating in the lives of our young people.
One more point on that. Do you think that the excessive use of young people's, or a lot of use of technology with young people socially might cause them to kind of miss or not learn certain social cues and maybe misread and kind of even aggravate that threat that you were talking about earlier? Kind of be able, like if we're just interacting at the schoolyard, like we're just not reading people as well as maybe we used to.
I think that is a possibility. I mean, it's very interesting. The social cues, how to read a room. I mean, understanding when you coming to a room, what is unfortunately, sometimes there's hierarchy when you walk into a room based off of your title, based off of the organization that you represent. If I'm coming from corporate America, from a Fortune 500 company, you come into a space. I work in a nonprofit, and I don't think necessarily and among nonprofits, right, we have that too, budget size, what may have you, but I'm all about the impact of work that we do. But the social cues is very, very interesting. Cell phones are also necessary, like if there's an emergency or if you have a doctor's appointment, or you need to see your therapist, you can access all of that through your cell phone. Absolutely. But have we lost the ability to connect? I think that's something that needs to be further explored. Where we used to connect was at home. Where we used to connect was on Sundays around a dinner table after we left our religious gathering. We had a gentleman that had been incarcerated for close to 15 years, and he came back, he was really upset. He says, we don't even talk anymore. He said, when I left, we used to have dinner on Sunday. Everyone grabs their food and they go watch their favorite program. And that conversation, that connectivity doesn't happen anymore. Even vacation, remember, you used to take family vacations for those of us that had the privilege to be able to afford that. That family vacation was to reconnect with one another. So can we build this community through social media? Perhaps, I believe in some regards you can, but there's nothing like coming together in a space with people, creating synergy, having conversation, diversity of thought that really fuse and create the synergy that's needed.
Are there any ways that you're trying to push for us to get back to that connectivity? Somewhat, right. Our organization, our office, we're hybrid, right? We're 2 to 3 days in the office, but when we do have full staff meetings, we come in person. And whenever we come in person, we provide, through our HR team, we provide, professional development and training. And whenever we do a survey, it just goes skyrocket. Our team loves that. But I believe they love it is because we have to force ourselves to slow down sometimes. We have to force ourselves to innovate. We have to say, nope, block this day off. We're coming together as a team. We can do team building. We can connect with one another. We can find out what's happening in the lives of one another, how their work and their programming is moving forward. So I do believe in many regards as a leader of an organization that I have to also exemplify and I have to be the example, right? So I have to make sure I'm present when we go to, when we come together. And
and have professional development and communicate with one another. It's a little easier for me being from Texas, right? I kind of have this southernness. I can sit and ask your mom and daddy how they doing and if things are going well. But if we don't be intentional about creating an opportunity for creativity, for innovation, and for connectedness, it may not happen because we're so busy on a day-to-day that we don't take the time to connect.
Can you touch on the connection between health, wellness, and all of these social community issues that we're discussing?
Well, health is wealth, and wealth is health. And when you think about physical well-being, much of what you are enduring or much of what's happening in your life can be sensed in your physical, right? If your blood pressure is elevated, if your heart rate is elevated, if you have this restless mind where you can't stop and focus, it's unfortunate. It's many times these external factors that occur, and sometimes the environment is manifest in our bodies. When I started doing research, I remember an article that I came across, it had to have been 15, 20 years ago. It said that your risk for stroke is highly correlated with your zip code. So I was wondering, your zip code, you mean your physical environment plays a significant role in your health? Absolutely. If you go on vacation, you look out your window, you see this gorgeous horizon, and you see this water and people out in their sailboats, you get a different vibe than when you look outside and you see a community that has been disinvested for years. Even the mural may have graffiti that's on it, the potholes. You're receiving that message. It's like, wow, here we go again, Groundhog Day. So we even got to think about how do we have mixed units where we can have low-income housing that has the same amenities that they have, 2 miles down the road. Can we have a good, vending system that's there for a child that may have asthma, right? Do we have a cooking kitchen so a parent can actually cook, even if it's a hot plate, right? Those are little things that we think about, right? We sometimes take for granted that these other family members don't have. So, it's not easy. The things that we do and the work that we do is, in many regards, is complex, but yet sometimes it's really so simple. How do we get people the resources that they need so they can live their full, optimal life? And by giving them those tools, we're starting to address what we call the social determinants of health. So just think about transportation. I can get up and hop in my car and go where I need to go. I'm not concerned about, and I'm a little concerned about traffic, don't get me wrong, but I'm concerned about if I get there 1 minute late, the bus can be gone. And I have to get my child to childcare by a certain time and pick them up by a certain time. If I don't pick them up at a certain time, then I'm going to get assessed a fee. See, those things start to worry people, right? And then your mental and physical health. So it's very difficult for someone to keep their head up when they don't know where they're going to lay their head that night. All right. If I'm experiencing homelessness or I'm hopping from place to place, I have to get my child and get back. So it's very difficult for them to be in the moment because their concern is that how am I going to protect and have the safety of my family for just tonight? So physical well-being, mental well-being is really a direct it's a direct correlation, but it's also strongly correlated with our physical environment and the social pressing issues that compounds someone's life. So those confluence of issues are big, and the number of factors that's placed against someone's life creates what I would say a unhealthy balance And unfortunately, sometimes that unhealthy balance causes them to start to pick up unhealthy habits.
It's like they say, if there's something wrong with your mind, check out your body. If there's something wrong with your body, check out your...
Yeah. There's some other research out there around epigenetics where they're saying that the external environment exposed over a period of time could actually begin to impact your genes. We already knows that it does impact your hemodynamics, right? Your biomarkers in your body. But these epigenetic, the research that's been done is really looking at long-time exposure of external factors, right? And sometimes these external factors have you to lose the locus of control. You're like, well, whatever happens out there, I have no control over, so therefore I don't have control over my life. And if you've been living in a community for a long time and you want to move out, but yet it's too expensive, or you've been priced out and affordability isn't there, or your child wants to be able to go to a particular school and you feel like that you're kind of stuck in the same place, that begins to play on your psyche as well. And that is detrimental to your mental and physical health.
What does the family unit mean to you?
Family, in a traditional sense, is those that you've been brought up with. You have shared traditions. You have shared customs. You've been exposed to the same morality as one another. You've learned good and bad. You've learned how to discern good and evil because you've had this relationship with your siblings. You have this relationship with your parents. Some of those relationships become broken over a period of time. Sometimes they never exist if you had a mother or a father that was not in your life, or unfortunately, they may have struggled with substance abuse. They may have struggled with addiction, and they were not the best parent you can have. I was blessed. I had two good parents, right? They were tough. And they brought me up in a Southern way, right? Where there was a level of accountability. But now, if you have a broken family in a traditional sense, where do you now find that sense of family? Is it on the job? Is it at school? Is it through your network of friends that you may have? And I think that's what we see when we see gangs. When we see neighborhoods that become very cliquish, and you see the eruption of sometimes violence, is that you find young people that's looking for acceptance. They're looking for a code of morality that they're finding in the wrong place. And then that external environment begins to be absorbed in the body. And then you begin to act and behave like them. But that becomes your family. And once that becomes your family, I have to protect my family at all costs. I have to have their back at all costs. And the challenge is that when you have the traditional family, not always, right? But there's someone to help you to discern between what's right, what's wrong, and good, and what's evil. And when that becomes seared in your thinking, or you really never understand what that threshold is, that becomes problemsome. So when you talk to young folks that may have been just as involved, or they may have been incarcerated, or they've been in juvenile detention center, one of the things they would usually say is that they wanted structure and didn't have structure. The reason why young people don't like their parents sometimes is because we're giving you structure. And there's expectations, right? So when you don't have that structure and you don't have expectations, now I'm off to determine that for myself. And what they found out, there was a correlation between, well, you didn't give me direction, you didn't give me that structure, did you even love me? Right. As you get older, so you reflect back, like, you let me do whatever I wanted to do, so you weren't even protecting me from myself. But, as they try to go through these various points of understanding, or as they deconstructing themselves and understanding themselves to whatever training, whatever program or services that's been offered, that's one of the things that come up. That if I had a structured home and an environment, then the love would have been reinforced. But now they didn't feel like there was love because I was kind of able to just wander around aimlessly, right? Without any purpose, without any goals, and without any expectations.
Is there a correlation between structure and liberation?
Structure and liberation. I think a structured person, a person that has built their own structure, can be liberated, right? If you're given a structure, but it's not your structure, the structure that you want to obtain or you want to be held captive by, then it doesn't feel like liberation, right? There's structure in jail, level of incarceration, right? But you've been told what to do, how to do it. You're not been told what to think, but there is structure, right? You went from an unstructured environment and you did whatever you did, and now you're in a structured environment. Doesn't mean that you're liberated. But if people can create the structure that they want, right? If I want to have my home in a community where I want it, I'm starting to build a structure. Can I get the job that's going to allow me to be able to send my kids to school, for me to be able to pay the bills, for me to put food on the table, and then maybe even take a vacation, right? That becomes a build of structure that's liberation for them. Most people may define liberation as having financial, right, liberation, where I'm not constrained by my finances. But you still need to be constrained by how you manage your finances, right? You can have all the money you think, but it doesn't take but a couple of bad decisions to be able to lose all of that. But I do believe that you need structure in order to have liberation, but I also believe you need to have some vision, and you have to do vision setting with individuals, with organizations, in order to understand what the purpose is. You know, we've heard that before. You know, without vision, the people perish. So what is your purpose? What are we here for? How do we find meaning of life? And so some of this may be some spirituality that's there as well. And I believe the numbers have been shown that this generation is less likely to go to a church or go to a structured religious place, or to even seek spiritual guidance from someone else. They may be getting it from, once again, sound bites, right? From social media, which may be factual or non-factual, but what they're doing is that they're creating their own belief system, right? And now if you have a belief system and no one ever challenges your belief system, then how do you know if your belief system is right? I ask my team, my staff all the time. I said, don't feel that you've been disrespectful when you challenge me and on questions. I said, I don't know if I'm right unless I've heard the other side of the argument.
To that point, I mean, it's not just short sound bites that the social media is telling young people what to believe, but the algorithm will reward and give you more of what you linger on. So whatever you end up starting to believe and interacting with, you will see more and more of that, and that will reinforce that belief.
Oh, yeah, with the algorithm. So if I search for something, I start watching something more and more and more, and it keeps feeding it back to you.
So you go as like straight right wing or straight left wing, it'll become polarized real quick.
It's almost like biofeedback in many regards. That's very interesting. But you know, it's hard to be able to get to extract all the good from social media, because from time to time something's going to be thrown your way that may distract you. And then how do you get back on track? And accountability partners have always been good. You know, we're going to hold you accountable in our programs, but we also want you to hold us accountable as administrators and facilitators of these programs. If we're not exemplifying the behaviors that we're asking you to, you have the right to call us out on it, right? We want to be able to have this mutual respect, this mutual responsibility, and mutual accountability. And I think that's what makes our programs a little bit different than others. Not only we're culturally competent, but we have a level of empathy. Many of our staff members are from the city of Philadelphia. Some have been there and done that. They understand the psyche. They've seen those things when they're growing up. And then they become credible messengers. See, we may be trusted as an urban league of Greater Philadelphia, but to have those credible messengers is different. Now that has changed the game. People may trust me, but now who you are, Dr. Anderson, you play basketball, you have a PhD, they see me as being something that's not relevant to them. They may trust me, I may not be the credible messenger. So I need to go and find a young person. One of the things we're trying to do is trying to get more young people to go into the building trades, right? We have the urban construction job program. So our job is to try to find between 100 and 120 individuals across the city, expose them to the building trades, take them through a pre-apprenticeship program, and hopefully they will enter into an apprenticeship program. And then from there, decide to apply and may go into the building trades. We have resources to take care of their child care, to give them a stipend, to help them with their rent, to help them with their mortgage, whatever they may need, because you need that support, because it takes about a year to go through a really good pre-apprenticeship program. And then if you go to the apprenticeship program. But look, we don't have access to the same people we had 25 years ago. Why? Because I'm not saying we've demonized, but what we've done, we've lifted up white collar jobs so much that when you have a blue collar job, you're considered to be inferior. Just, doctors have become lawyers, become PhDs. And right now, if you try to call someone to get your hot water heater fixed, it may take you 2 months to find yourself a plumber or someone HVAC. Right now, we have elevators, I guarantee you, throughout the city that's under construction that doesn't work because we don't have enough elevator engineers. We don't have enough elevator mechanics. So many of those jobs are needed and they're paying top dollar. But we need to find an avatar, someone to come and say, yes, I am an HVAC. I fix air conditioners. I fix heaters. I place hot water heaters. I wear Jordans. I have jeans. I have a family. I'm structured. I look like you. And this is what I make. This is how I set my schedule. And when you start to expose them to that, they're like, I never knew that existed.
And often these blue collar workers are going to be way better social skills than the white collar because they're interacting with so many more people,
Yeah, that could be the case, right? Or sometimes it's the culture, right? Culture is really the software of the mind. So where did you grow up, how you were exposed? Remember when we went to college, college is to make you a more well-rounded individual. And when you apply for colleges, you got to have the academics, right? You got to have the SAT scores, and they want to see your community service, how you're interacting with people. I believe that those in the blue collar have been left behind. The blue collar jobs have not been esteemed. And I said, if we're going to be able to connect the city, because I do believe that some of the division we have is along economic lines. And if white collar workers can begin to talk up and to lift up and to put a level of prestigiousness on the blue collar jobs, and I think we're going to get more people going into that space, right? And I think we can get more above the poverty line, but also we can begin to fill jobs that's needed. The city has close to 3,000 jobs that need to be filled. How do we increase? How do we upscale the skills that's needed from our young people so they can ascertain those jobs? Because those jobs come with medical, comes with dental, right? Buying your first home. That's the first step in developing wealth, is to buy your home. We do first-time home buyers counseling. We prepare between 250 to 260 families every quarter to buy their first home. We do pre-purchase counseling. How do I budget? Financial literacy. What does it mean to own a house? What do you mean I need to provide my tax, my tax returns to you? Well, we need to be able to walk you through it. We have to build that trust. But now we're starting to hone in and spend more time on post-purchase, right? If you buy the home, how do we keep you in the home? How do we help you to make a decision? What if you lose your job? How do we buy you time? What can be done? Because that can become stressful, right? Buying a home is stressful, but now I just lost a job and I'm concerned I can't pay, my mortgage. So that post-purchase counseling is just as important.
How does one become a hero in their community?
I'm not a big Marvel fan. I mean, that's my kids are, but I have a 17-year-old daughter and a 19-year-old son who actually next week will be 20. A hero is someone that doesn't have necessarily super natural skills, right? Or someone that has an ability that's beyond human ability, right? It's really someone that shows up and that's willing to do whatever it takes to see the best in someone else, or to help the best to be nurtured in someone else. So it could just be the person that decides, I'm going to use my car and to pick someone up and drop them off at the doctor's office, or I'm going to send you a text message or give you a call today. Or if someone is traveling, and rather than them spending money to send their pet to a doggy hotel, that they say, I'm going to come by every day and to check on your pet and take he or her for a walk. So I think everyday interactions with people can become a heroic moment. I've been trained in mental health first aid. I'm also a first aid instructor. But with mental health first aid, one of the primary points that's emphasized is just recognizing the change in behavior in someone, very subtly, whether they're getting angry faster than what they've done before in the past, have their behavior changed, have their pattern of how they go to work, when they go to work changed, or they showing up for work, little things of that nature. And when you see that pattern happens, hey, how are you doing? Just checking in on. They call them wellness checks, right? So a hero can be a little bit of everyone, but it used to be back in the day where a hero would be your celebrity, right? I would watch, Denzel Washington or Robert De Niro, right? Or you get a chance to watch all of these actors, Tom Hanks. The celebrity status is not the same anymore. The celebrity now, or what they call influencers, is that person that has 1.5 million followers that lives in the community. I had an event last year. I got a chance to speak on stage. It was a young lady, 19 years of age. We came off stage. We took a picture, and the picture with me went viral. I had no idea she had over 1 million followers. And she was a brand ambassador. I'm saying, you're 19 years of age. So how can we leverage your stardom and your ability to influence for good? So as organizations, it's not necessarily about the organization going viral, but how do we allow someone's story to go viral that's relevant to someone and that can help them in their situation?
What's next for you?
This is my second year with the Urban League of Greater Philadelphia. Couple things that we're looking to do as an organization. We are waiting to open up our location in West Philadelphia. We've worked with a number of our elected officials, and we've asked them, we say, we need to place our programs and services in the neighborhood, and they agreed. So we're hoping by next year sometimes we'll have our West Philadelphia location up and going, where we're providing services there. Right now we're in Center City. We're hoping to, by next year or maybe the year after, to be able to have a home for returning citizens. It'll be transitional housing for those that are coming out from incarceration. That is sometimes one of the biggest opportunities that's missed. If we can provide housing, then we can begin to provide about 40% of the stability that they need. Now we help them get a job. And then once they have a job and they have income in, now we can begin our rehabilitation. We can begin to place them into our programs. But as long as they're hungry, don't have a place to stay, and they have no income coming in, those things need to be met right away in order for us to have the credibility to keep them as part of the program. And the other is, with our name change to become Greater Philadelphia, is now that our services will be in the Collier counties, in Delaware County, Montgomery, Bucks, and Chester, as well as South Jersey. We're starting to grow a little bit by little bit. We want to make sure that we kind of stick to what we know. We know workforce, we know reentry, we know small businesses, we know youth and education, we know health and wellness, we know civic engagement. So we know those things, raising money, providing those programs. But how do we now become what I call a multi-generationally relevant organization, right? From the civil rights era, we understood what that means. We don't have anything, we're going to march until we get it. Our younger generations now, we have it, but I'm still not liberated. right? And my life hasn't changed. You know, there's data that's out there that shows that, you know, it doesn't matter who the president have been or what their messaging may be. My life hasn't changed. So why do I need to vote? Why do I need to hear someone tell me about civic engagement, civic participation? If I can't see beyond my barriers, my pain, my lack of success. So therefore, you having this conversation with me, you know, someone put it this way. I was listening to a gentleman from, I'm drawing a blank on his name, from Hit Strategies. He does quite a few community forums. And he says, can you just simply tell me why my life sucked and how to help me to unsuck it? That's what it's about right there. The politics, we understand that they come and go. My life hasn't changed under whatever president that was there. I tried to get a business loan and it didn't happen. I don't have access to the resources that I need. I don't have equity. My life sucks. So if my life sucks, why do I need to get up and go and vote, which we're voting here in the city almost every 6 months? So we have a problem in front of us in order to be able to link what I call our older generation, our unks, our wise men, to our young men, our young generation. I'm 50. I feel like I'm right in the middle. Because our young men want to have the conversation, but they're not going to be part of a conversation where they feel like they've been belittled, they've been berated, they've been dismissed, they've been told, you're not doing anything, you're not mounting up to anything. They'll walk away because they don't feel like they have to endure that. But if we're having a conversation with them and seeking to understand why you feel like your life sucks, and if your life sucks, then how do you get it unsucked? And because I don't want to do what we did 30 years ago, I don't want to keep a job and have it for 35 and 40 years and then I get a watch and you retire. Our young people have endured, COVID. They endured in 2008 when we had the subprime lending debacle, where this country was, the economy was terrible, right? It had slowed down. So young people have seen that. So they're like, okay, I'm going to spend all of my life working and then watch all of my retirement, dwindle in the market. No, I want to make some money, but I also want to live my life because I don't know what's lurking around the corner. So we have to understand what they endured, what our older people have endured, find some common language and knowledge and begin to have the conversation. If we remain divided, then how can your house stand? So we're going to continue to get what we get until we decide that we're going to do things differently. And the Urban League is ready to be able to create that table. It's not our job. We don't need to create the table. We're going to ask our young people to create the table. You invite who you want to the table. We help the resources so we can have the conversation and to be able to help you to understand and to be able to dissect your pain.
Where can we keep up with all this?
Well, the Urban League of Greater Philadelphia, you can go right to our website. It's www.urbanleaguephila.org. There's quite a bit of information that's there. We're always out in the community. We have various events. In fact, tomorrow we have an expungement clinic. So social media, that's where most of our information, we're learning that we have quite a few followers that are out there. It is great. You can learn more about us through, Chris, through your podcast. Hopefully there may be some questions or something that may that may cause for you to ask more questions, or that may engineer questions within you that we can answer. But the Urban League is here fighting for you as a human and civil rights organization. Our job is to empower people, empower communities, help people get the resources and tools that they need so they can reach their full potential. That's our goal. That's our aim. That's our mission.
Dr. Anderson, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.